And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
Welcome into Tapped Out. Good to have you along with my co-host Brendan Tobin. I am the sports machine, Sean Levine. UFC 300 BT shaping up right in front of our eyes. And I said last week during the show that I don't think we have a main event just yet, right? The best fight, I think most of us would say, maybe the most intriguing, the BMF on the line. That's Justin Gaethje, of course, in the cage versus Max Holloway. Apparently we're going to get that announcement sometime this week from Dana White. Do you have any inside information? Do you have any inklings of what we're going to hear?
I really don't, because it seems like the only thing that would be teased this much would be Conor's comeback. And there's been some, I guess, flirtation with him and Michael Chandler and, some of the, Nate Diaz stuff has been there a little bit, but I really don't. I don't think that, we know John's hurt, so I don't think it's a John Jones bomb. I don't think that it's the heavyweight championship, because I don't even know if a heavyweight title between Aspinall and Stipe dwarfs the BMF title. So I'm guessing that the only thing that Dana has left is that Conor is going to make his long anticipated return.
Versus Chandler or versus Nate Diaz?
I think versus Chandler. I think versus Chandler.
Okay. The reason that I think that's the most likely thing that we're going to hear for the main event in UFC 300, and then we'll be able to talk about this on next week's show and see if we were right or see if we're dumbasses like usual, is Conor announced like a month ago that he was going to be fighting Michael Chandler, but that it was going to be later on in the summer. That feels like it's too easy just to move up. As long as Conor's healthy enough, it feels like you just move that up a couple of months. We're talking about the difference, April, May, June. So 2.5 months from what Conor told us a little while ago. That makes a whole lot of sense. What's the one that you would like to see the most? Like, what do you hope Dana White comes out and says? Because I hope he tells us, you know what? Nate Diaz is coming back to the UFC, and he's fighting Conor McGregor. You guys have been wanting the third one for a while. It's going to be too late pretty soon here. Now's the time. That's what I want to see.
I don't disagree with you. I feel like just because of the history of it, there's so, for this sport, I love the times where we can have something that even in the current day could feel like it's going to be a classic. And those guys, their third fight is an absolute classic. As fun as Michael Chandler is, to me, I mean, Michael Chandler is almost more synonymous with Bellator than he is the UFC. He's had a great fight and he's had some real classics and he's really entertaining, but the Nate Diaz-Conor rivalry, kind of spans recent UFC lore. So that would obviously be way bigger. And also, I just think the idea of, like, if Conor McGregor is going to do this thing where he's not going to really cut weight, I just feel like it's a little bit less of a freak show if Nate is also, because Nate's older. So Nate not having to cut weight and being at whatever weight, I think is a little bit more natural than Michael Chandler, where Conor's going to try and bully him via size.
We are a sports betting show here. After all, it is the BetQL Network. So if we did see that fight, if it ends up being Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 3, who do you think's favored to win the fight? Because obviously we've seen Nate in the octagon a little bit more recently. Conor coming off of another injury. We've seen them fight each other a couple of times before, but it's been, what are we talking about now? When's the last time we saw those guys in the octagon? 5, 6 years ago at this point? So it's been quite a while. You have to wonder who's got the better skill set, who's got the better gas tank. Most of the time, you just go, well, Conor McGregor's going to be favored because he's Conor McGregor, and that's how it works. But he's fighting Nate's one of the more popular fighters as well that we get some public money. You just make it a pick 'em and say, screw it, right?
Yeah, and I think that Conor probably will end up being the favorite just because of popularity and Nate's age. Just for the record, it was 8 years ago, or almost 8 years ago. Yeah. Well, the last time they fought was August 2016. That was when Conor versus Nate 2 was.
Wow. Wait, so you're telling me Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, the first time they fought was damn near 10 years ago at this point?
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah. Dude. We're getting old. You weren't even a dad at that time. Or maybe you were.
I was.
Pretty close. All right.
I was, but it was a while, dude. It was a while. I would just had my second child.
Oh,
With,
well, thank you for rubbing it in. I
but I'm
appreciate
just
it.
telling you,
Yeah, no,
it is crazy that my son just celebrated his 8th birthday, so it's like it's right there. Um,
and I said 5 years ago that you maybe don't want to age yourself quite that much. That's the one that I want to see. It'd be awesome if we got it. I don't think anybody would complain if that ends up being the main event, except for Michael Chandler. And then at
yeah,
that point, I think here's what you do. You bring him in a little room and you go, look, dude, I get it. Like, you want to fight Tom McGregor, everybody does. Maybe you still get that one down the line. Maybe they guarantee him that fight if he wins or something like that. But you just give him the bag, you know? You just give him a bunch of money. If you're Dana White, you have it. And maybe you tell him he gets to fight the winner of the BMF belt or something like that. I mean, Michael Chandler's going to be fine if he doesn't fight Conor McGregor. So I think that if you ask me what's the one fight that could actually happen to be the main event for UFC 300, I think it's Nate Conor 3.
yeah, that would definitely be rabbit out of the hat if that was the one. If it does end up being Chandler, look, that's a fun fight too. Um, I actually think that Connor versus Nate, the reason I like it a little bit more is just because I feel like it's a little bit more of an even playing field. Because Michael's been in there with the best of the best, you know, and even when Nate was fighting and Nate's in there, you know, Nate was, you know, ending against Tony Ferguson, you know, so like I think that for him, it's just like just got done fighting Jake Paul. I think it's a little bit more up to speed for Nate too. Whereas Chandler's been in there with the best of the best. I feel bad for him, but he's also had a really good UFC run so far as like big fights are concerned. He is not like it's not like he's been an afterthought since he's come here. He's definitely made his mark, even though his record isn't the most pristine. A lot of his fights, people care about him, and they're usually entertaining.
He also did fight Tony Ferguson for the record and completely rearranged that guy's chin. Speaking of Conor McGregor, the Roundhouse trailer's out. After watching the trailer, I'm gonna see the movie. You gonna watch it?
Yeah, me too. I was into it.
Yeah.
Definitely into it. Especially it's on Prime. Like who doesn't have Prime for your streaming pleasure? So of course, I'm definitely gonna check it out. Looked fun. Conor McGregor and the Keys. I mean, he's certainly gotten into trouble down here in South Florida before, so why not? Let's just check it out. Jake Gyllenhaal. I think it could be pretty entertaining. It looks fun, and you know, maybe this is the thing. It shows that Conor's got a future doing something else.
I mean, something else is right around the corner. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine, talking a little fighting and making a little money here on the BetQL network. It is tapped out. What else we got here? Aljamain Sterling has Sean O'Malley's name in his mouth, basically saying that he's not as big of a draw as the UFC makes him out to be, except at UFC 299, because at 299, the card is stacked. Like what Aljo's saying basically is they're trying to make Sean look good by stacking the card, and you're going to be there, Octagon side in Miami. I think there's a little something to it, only because you would think there was UFC 300, obviously chronological order, last time I checked, coming up after 299, that they could save a Poirier, right? They could save an Almeida or whoever some of these other guys are that would be fun for that card. 299 is almost as good as 300.
It's a great card. I don't know if it's necessarily a Sean's not popular thing. I think that fight's going to do pretty good marketing wise. I think that Cheeto and Sean have a lot of heat. I think they're going to sell that fight well. You know, I do think this is the thing I would say to people with Miami is Dana said last time this is going to be one of his annual stops. You know, now he's kind of got all his eggs in a basket to make sure that this does work. The last time he had the Masvidal card, he doesn't have any South Floridians to lean on. He does have O'Malley, but he's got some guys who are South Florida residents and guys who train down here. So I think he just wants to make sure that this market works out and make sure it's a stacked card. It's a big event because I do think he wants this to be one of their locations. He calls Miami, he's calling it the new LA. That's what a lot of outsiders are referring to Miami as.
What does that mean?
Just like the new glitz and glam city that hasn't been like, you know, that isn't all shut down. It's opening crazy down here. Trust me, I've noticed there's a gazillion New Yorkers who have moved down here. So I think that that's just a case of him wanting the card to work out. I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on Sean, but you know, the whole thing that got him kind of prickly on Twitter about it was, you know, when I said the idea of we don't know that he's got the star power yet, as opposed to Masvidal, who's proven it, who's done 1 million plus pay-per-views, who didn't need as stacked a card to sell out that building. This is kind of Sean's proving ground. Like, we've all been waiting for the Sugar Show. Now it's time to show that the Sugar Show has the buzz that I think it's going to be. I think that he's gonna, can get on an entertaining run here. He's in a Shark Tank of a division, but he has to get on a run and start winning a lot of fights in impressive style.
I'm glad you mentioned his star power, if you will, in the UFC, because I've got a Levine's list coming up for you here shortly. I've got the biggest draws in the history of the UFC. I came up with the top 5, and then my top 5 right now, guys who are active, who I think most people would get out to actually go see. So we'll have a little fun coming up on the other side. Real quick, didn't Don Johnson make Miami cool? Like in the late 70s, early 80s? Hadn't it been cool for a while?
It's not cool, but it's like one of these things where everybody thinks like wow, this place has been amazing because they came
Who knew? Miami.
Like, oh my God, I'm telling it's a bit of a frustrating thing for sure. It's like, oh, we just realized this place is really cool as opposed to other cities that we were going to. Like, yeah, we do.
Miami's dope. Miami's Vegas with a beach. Are you kidding me? PFL season right around the corner, starts in April, so we're talking about 3 months from today, actually. Of course, Francis Ngannou, the signing this last offseason. At some point, we're going to see him. He also has a big boxing match coming up against Anthony Joshua. What's like the timetable, you think, when we see Francis Ngannou in a mixed martial arts fight again?
It's a good question because, I think with his success in the Fury fight, he doesn't really need to do MMA, I think, anymore. Like,
he owes PFL is solid. He's got to get in there at least once.
He owes it to them theoretically, and I think that he's a man of character who will, but he doesn't really have to do it now because he has already proven, like, I've got 2 of the top guys in boxing in the last year. So it's going to be interesting. I think it depends on how the Joshua fight goes. Does he look great? Does he win? Does he get killed? Like, it's such a wild card. Let's just say run-of-the-mill decision fight. I think by the end of the year, it's probably about time for him to make his MMA return.
Why do the odds makers think he has no chance? Last time I checked, Anthony Joshua was like a minus 800.
I think, AJ's been fighting really well lately. His last couple of matchups, he's looked very, very strong. I don't think people believe Joshua's going to show up to this fight like Fury did with like the element of surprise that Fury has. And I think it's also a case of like, he's either got to knock him out or he's not going to win. He's not going to win a decision against him. So I think that's probably why the odds are the way they are. It's quintessential puncher's chance. So if you want to just throw a little something of that night on Francis Ngannou, even if you just want to bet on like knockdown, I don't know what those odds will end up being like, but in fight week we'll know. I think that's something fun to just kind of bet on in a fight like that, where you don't think that he has win, but there's some fun props to go to bet because you think Francis has just got that kind of thunder in his fists.
Who you got in the Fury Usyk fight? That fight's coming up real soon.
Oh man, I have Fury, but I am concerned. I'm definitely more concerned than I've ever been about him because this guy, I think, lost to Francis Ngannou. Well, I know a lot of boxing people don't want to say that, but I thought that he lost the fight up and down, and I think he got messed up in the fight because this fight was supposed to be in December. They punted on it. They delayed it. So I think just based on Fury's size and knowing how to take advantage of Usyk's weaknesses, I think he can get the win. He's just that kind of savvy, but I don't feel as much of a slam dunk as I did back before the Ngannou fight.
No, I mean, I don't see how you could. And of course, Tyson Fury didn't feel too great. He got hit by a Mack truck that was called Francis Ngannou. Again, coming up on the other side, I've got a Levine's list for you, the biggest draws in the history of the UFC, and then the biggest draws today. Before we wrap up this segment, though, let's see here. John Anik was like on his podcast, kind of hinted at retirement, backed off of it pretty quick. When it comes to Anik, I think we both agree he's great. Friend of the show. He came on very early. I want to say he was our second guest, right? We had on.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. John's great people, man.
John is great, and he loves you, South Florida fan.
I felt bad that he even felt the need to walk it back. Kind of just shows you how much he cares about the brand of UFC, because I don't think that he said anything offensive. I think he's right. I think that the MMA social media landscape has just gotten so, and this is with all sports. I don't think it's just an MMA thing, but MMA is like got such a toxicity to it. Anyway, like we've all been to the UFC, like back in the day, going to a bar to watch a UFC card, and everybody with their affliction shirts who think that they can do this. It's, it's just a different breed, and there's just no nuance to this stuff anymore. Like you can't have a fun debate. It's either like you won. If you won or lost, it's like you either got robbed, or it was because of politics, or it was because of whatever.
But the difference, I think, real quick, BT, when you say it's all sports, I agree. People are bitching now more than ever. I'm a Chiefs fan talking to you here from Kansas City, and win, lose, or draw, one of the first things you always hear is the officials this, that. They do what they can. There's no inside. Anyway, I think that UFC, mixed martial arts, is a little bit different, though, because we do have judges. And so when these fights do go to the scorecards, I do understand why people feel very strongly about it, especially, and this maybe isn't fair, if they have money on it. For example, Volkanovski versus Islam the first time around. You and I both had our money on Volkanovski, 4-1 underdog. Both would have had a nice little payday. Both would have made enough to take a quick trip to Vegas. Not a ton of money, you know what I'm saying? But either way, afterwards, we're calling each other going, that was a robbery, that was BS, because there are judges. So to me, that's part of the game. It's part of the fun.
Yeah, but I think the thing that's different about it, though, is you and I, we get to do this an hour, a couple hours a week, just to kind of give our thoughts on it. When you get to the rage that's on social media, people just want to flip out on it one way or another. The thing is, if you're getting...
I was freaking out that night. I was freaking out.
I think my biggest thing with a guy like John is, John's not a controversial figure. He's not a guy who gives... I know he has a podcast, but he's the voice of the UFC. And by the way, usually is very... he does his homework, always on top of things, has research on these guys. I just to question anything, if you guys are going to genuinely bother John Anik, I think that's more of a MMA fan base problem than it is a John Anik problem. And I don't think that he was serious that he wants to leave the sport, but I think it's a frustration that he is like, dude, like I can't say anything. Me, like what am I trying to do? Like I know all these guys at the top of the prelims. You guys don't. And it's like, that's, I think, probably the frustration that he has. Because John's a real one. I don't understand the idea that, people would ever want to get that pissed at him. But I do think that it's just like it's one way or the other on social media these days.
Like you said, though, social media, it's dumb, it's the internet, it's fake. And I think John Anik at this point probably knows that his popularity level amongst, and I'll admit, it took me a while to get used to him also, amongst the real ones, the real fans, us, or just the casuals, it's got to be like 98%. Everybody loves John Anik, so he shouldn't be trapped.
I would agree. He did replace, like, Mike Goldberg was loved.
He was great, too.
Although it was actually funny to say, I remember Mike Goldberg did go to the NFL, had like one podcast, and he was like, and he lit people up on social media who were crushing him. So
if you want, have you seen that? Have you seen the highlights of the game that Mike Goldberg did in the NFL?
I haven't remembered, but I do remember him not getting to do a game again because he was just hosing people down on social media about it.
YouTube it if you want some entertainment after the game. It is unbelievable. It's he called some people out, but just the quality, like he wasn't even trying. Maybe he wasn't. It was not good. Oh, that's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. I got a Levine's list for you coming up next right here. I'm tapped out.
We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Welcome back into the show. Fighting through like a champion, as sick as he is, with a very, very mild cold down in Miami. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. All right, man. Levine's list time, only because I feel like now's a good time to talk popularity with Sean O'Malley coming up in the Octagon, UFC 299 in Miami. Conor McGregor, rumors that he's coming back at UFC 300. First, I'm going to go from 5 to 1. Here's my 5 biggest draws. And then you tell me why I'm an idiot, like you usually do. Honorable mentions. These guys and gals did not make my list. Amanda Nunes, John Jones, Nate Diaz, BJ Penn, Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen. All of them were damn close to making my list, but I don't think any of them are amongst the 5 most popular draws in UFC history. Here's my list. Number 5, Brock Lesnar, the Beast incarnate. Not for me, but he had the wrestling crossover appeal, and he was just a big dude. Everybody loved Brock Lesnar. Number 4, they call him the pay-per-view king, GSP. Not the most fun fighter to watch, but everybody got her. If you're a real fight fan, when GSP was fighting, you were watching. At number 3, we don't talk about it. Like, we talk about pretty much every fighter up and down on this show. I could talk about 100 different times I've mentioned the name Chael Sonnen or Anderson Silva or whoever. We don't bring up the name Chuck Liddell that often, do we? Doesn't it kind of feel like over the last 2.5 years since we've been doing this show, his name doesn't come up that often? But when it comes to all-time draws, think about the Iceman was when he had that goatee clean. He was knocking people out, running around the octagon. I mean, that might have been, to me, what got me into the UFC. Number 2, she is Ronda Rousey, right? There's not women's MMA if it's not for Ronda Rousey for a long time. I mean, she was selling out literal stadiums. And then number 1, everybody knows where I'm going. Conor McGregor at the top, the biggest draw, maybe in history, not just of the UFC, but in combat sports. Before I get to my current 5 biggest draws, what say you?
I do like the Chuck Liddell call. I don't know if he's too high on the list or not, but I will say, getting a chance. I was doing what was I at? Oh, I was doing Canelo Triple G 2 Radio Row, and they were announcing the Tito. It was when Oscar De La Hoya ventured off into MMA, and they launched Chuck versus Tito 3 there in Golden Boy Promotions. And meeting Chuck Liddell, I was like, oh man, that's a moment. That was cool because he stopped by the table. We got to talk to him. So you definitely had the whole thing.
Handshake.
That's the mohawk. I was like, oh man, and this was cool. So I love Chuck Liddell being on the list. GSP is an interesting one because I do think that GSP is loved, and I think certainly as far as selling an arena in Canada, the guy really carried a nation with himself before Conor did. But thinking about your honorable mentions, the only guys I think you have to probably wonder about are Chael, because I think Chael really did a great job of his entire thing is being a pay-per-view draw. So is he good enough to dethrone anybody on this top 5? Definitely not the top 2. I think he could sneak in there, but it's hard to knock Brock off there. And then John Jones is an interesting one too, because he's been just a main event guy for so long. And I think that's kind of the interesting question about that is does longevity put him in there? So I think that I don't know if I'd have Chuck as high as I would. I think I might actually put Brock 3 because I feel like he is, he's absolutely one of the rock stars.
Yeah.
That crossed over mainstream. And if I was going to knock anybody off, I think it'd be GSP, but it could only be for Chael or John Jones. It's a great list.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, thank you, man. For Chael, he's an interesting one because if you talk about Conor McGregor, you could argue he's one of not just the most popular, but best fighters of all time. Same thing with GSP. There's a bunch of guys on this list. BJ Penn in his prime, Anderson Silva. And then you got these other guys. Chael Sonnen, not to talk any smack, he wasn't he's not an all-time great. Now, did he have some all-time great fights and moments, and should he have won the belt? Yeah. I mean, he beat up on Anderson Silva for 4.5 rounds. He should have won the belt that night. There were a couple of different times that he was really close. All I'm trying to say is the difference between this list, which has the great fighters that everybody wanted to see, like the GSPs and like the Anderson Silvas, and then you got Brock Lesnar on there, right? Who was a couple of fights over 500. And Nate Diaz, who doesn't have the shiniest record. What it goes to show you is you don't have to be great to be loved in this sport.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. If you wanted to sneak it, Chael's biggest accomplishment is that people cared about watching him. And that's just a fantastic for never winning a championship. That's a pretty impressive thing. Of recent lore, you could put Masvidal in there because of that, and a lot of he got the rub from Nate Diaz, so those guys are kind of connected too. But Chael's such a unique character because it really didn't matter you win or lose. People just wanted to hear what the bad guy was gonna say. So I think if I was gonna knock anybody off the top, that's probably would just because of not being the greatest fighter of all time, the purest MMA guy of all time. He's got that just it quality that made people want to tune in to see it.
Good call there on Masvidal. Masvidal's popularity, though, is weird because for a long time, he wasn't even necessarily like a main card guy. He was middle of the road. And then once he became popular, he became must-see TV. I bought a canvas with him on it, sitting right behind my shoulder here. And it was like a 2-year, I don't want to say flash in the pan or shooting star, but once he hit his prime, he definitely became, there were like probably 2 or 3 pay-per-views, right? The BMF fight, the Darren Till fight, after the Askren fight, maybe a couple of the Usman fights. He had 5 or 6 probably pay-per-views where you had to see him fight during his career. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. This is Levine's List, the biggest draws of all time. Let's do this one together, all right? Team effort here. Biggest draws right now. At the top, and these are active fighters, so John Jones, don't know we're going to see him next. Keep him off the list. Connor, we're going to see him at some point. I think we agree. Still at the top, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So we got Connor at the top. We crossed that one off. At 2, is there anybody obvious? Because I've got 2 or 3 guys I think we could argue about.
Right now, for 2, I think it's probably, I'm going to say either Adesanya or O'Malley probably are the obvious 2. And then maybe Volkanovski, I think, are the guys that I think are the top contenders right now.
So that's my list. You stole it right out from underneath.
Sorry.
So I got Connor at 1. I got Volkanovski at 2. I got O'Malley at 3. I got Izzy at 4. I got Gaethje at 5. So don't need to talk too much about Connor's popularity. Let's start with Volk. Volk, over the last couple of years, I think has proven, BT, win, lose, or draw, people are going to watch him fight. Whether he's fighting Brian Ortega and getting his head almost squeezed off and somehow winning that fight, whether he's fighting Islam in a fight that we both thought that he won the first time around or on short notice after that, whether he's fighting Max Holloway the first or the second or the third time. I think for about the last, let's call it 3 years, Alexander Volkanovski has gone from being a really good fighter to an all-time great to an all-time popular fighter also.
Yeah, I think a couple of things did this for, I think definitely the rivalry with Holloway. I think he went from a guy that was almost unpopular to the third fight of him putting his stamp on it to like, okay, nobody can deny this guy anymore. And I think that's, he's very, very charismatic. I think people just dig the idea that he's got a little old school to him too. He'll go fight Islam on 10 days notice. I think there's just a big respect quality out there. So,
dude, he's short, he's bald, and he has an accent. Like, how can you not love that guy?
Yeah. Dies with sharks, was a rugby player, he's just very, very marketable. I think that, for him, it's, he's definitely had such a great last, I think, 3 years as far as getting that recognition that he deserves. I don't know if he's past O'Malley or Izzy, but he is, he certainly, I think, is definitely top 5 right now, for sure.
I've got O'Malley at 3. I'm very interested to see what kind of numbers he gets for this upcoming pay-per-view, UFC 299 in Miami, because, look, you and I are going to get the fights because it's part of our job and because we're geeks and we're willing to spend whatever money they're going to take from us because that's just what we do. But a lot of people are going to save their money up for UFC 300, which technically will be only a month or so after 299. I think it's going to do big numbers. I think anytime that you've got Sean O'Malley on the card, it's going to be pretty crazy. Although we talked about this at the top of the show, it's not just him on the 299 card. The whole thing's stacked top to bottom.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think, honestly, Dustin Poirier maybe has a chance to get in there just because of his rivalry with Conor. I think that he's also starting to be one of those guys that they can just always rely on, almost Cowboy Cerrone-esque of being that popular no matter where he is, and because his fights are never going to be boring. But O'Malley's just, the question with him is just how long is this run going to go? Because he had the perfect contender fight of having a close matchup with Petr Yan, and then he went and won the championship the next time around. So for me, he's already started to stack the resume in a great place, but he just needs the big finishes. I think the thing that made Conor popular is Conor went and got knockouts. So if he could start racking up some knockouts in a big way, then sky's the limit for him. I think that he's not as great a talker as a lot of these great stars were, but he's good. He's good. He's recognizable. Everybody knows the hair. So I think it's all there for him if he wants it.
Will you wipe your nose down there? You're disgusting. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Talking a little fighting here on Tapped Out on the BetQL network. Maybe you got us on YouTube. If you do, look my way, not his. My apologies for this guy. Look at this mess over here. Obviously, Izzy's popularity is wild, and I would say he went from being a guy that was you had to watch him fight to he earned everybody's respect to what would you describe him as right now? Because I don't think Izzy's at the top of his game of popularity right now. Not that he's unpopular, but maybe he's just a knockout away from being that guy.
That's the thing with him is we talk about all the guys out here. I think he's probably got the best, resume.
Highlight reel for sure.
Yeah, he's got a ton of highlights, but Izzy's got I think the thing that's great with Izzy is our standards are so high with Israel Adesanya because of how great a striker he is. He's the only guy, I think, as far as dangerous strikers that you feel like really could take the mantle from Anderson Silva. And like Anderson, Anderson had some stinkers in there as well, but you always knew you had to tune in because there's a chance you might see something great. And so that's why I think just because of his longevity, where he's at, I still feel like if you told me, Tobin, you could only spend your next $80 on either Sean O'Malley versus Cheeto or Drickus versus Izzy, I think I'd go Drickus versus Izzy just because of the storyline, the rivalry. Feel like, it's gonna be an entertaining fight. So I still give him the slight nod over O'Malley.
If you have $80 to spend, you might want to think about getting some NyQuil. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. And then who we got at 5? So our top 4 biggest draws, we actually agree on something. Conor, Volk, O'Malley, Israel Adesanya. Holloway's still got to be pretty close, but I don't think he's there. I think it's Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, Gaethje's definitely up there. I'm looking right now, pound for pound. I mean,
it's not Usman anymore. It's not Izzy anymore. It's not Pereira yet. I don't think a guy like Tai Tuivasa is quite that popular. No. Nobody likes Aspinall except for me. Is there, I think it's going to be like a Poirier or a Max or a Gaethje.
I think you probably got the names. I mean, like we talked about with UFC 300, for me to say, I don't think there's really anybody who could top the, Gaethje versus Holloway as a main event for 300 unless they have Conor McGregor. Kind of speaks to this point. Maybe you want to go, if you still consider Stipe, because, but if you do, maybe. But even then, even if you did include Stipe, I don't know if he's more popular than those 3 guys. And listen, there's a reason that they're all 3 of those guys you mentioned are all co-main eventers for the pay-per-views coming up. They don't have belts, but everybody's got to see them.
Speaking of the pay-per-view coming up, we're going to talk about that on the other side. UFC 298 is now just 3 weeks away. Alexander Volkanovski, Ilya Topuria is the main event. And we've got fights on Saturday night, UFC Vegas 85. We talk about it next. And let's make a little money together. All right, it is the BetQL Network.
We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Welcome back into the show. That is Brendan Tobin. I am the sports machine, Sean Levine. Behind the scenes, our producer, Jake Noaker. We got fights coming up on Saturday night, baby. Renato Moicano is the main event, taking on Drew Dober at UFC 85. Dober is the underdog at plus 150. Moicano is the favorite at minus 185. Certain guys, BT, if I see their underdog money, I play them every single time. Drew Dober's actually been the dog in 3 out of his last 4 fights. I think the dog barks on Saturday night. I got Drew Dober by knockout at 4-1. I also like Drew Dober to win the fight at plus 150.
I don't hate that pick. I mean, Drew Dober is always live when it comes to knockouts. He's just very dangerous, and Moicano is one of those guys where it's the one thing with Moicano that's known about him and that you got to be careful with is he's a tough guy to finish. He's a tough guy to put out. Now it's been done fairly recently for Ziva to get him with the TKO. But he's tough, man. He's tough to put away. So you do wonder with all that experience if he could bring this into the past the first round. Can he get Drew Dober to gas out a little bit? But I like Dober. I think the value there is pretty great. So I agree with you there.
I like underdogs on this card pretty much the whole way. Muslim Salikov is 2-1 in his fight against the rude boy Randy Brown, -250. I like Randy Brown, made some money over him over the years. He's got the knockout power for sure, but I'm not going to pay -250. Give me Salikov at 2-1.
I'm going with Randy Brown. I think Randy Brown gets this done. I think I'll win a decision. Which you can get a little bit of plus money on if you don't want to pay the -260 for it. But I think that I'm not putting Salikov past him. I think Randy Brown gets this done, and I think it goes to the judges.
Price is just too much for me to pay. Nasruddin Imavov is the favorite in his fight against Roman Dolidze. Again, I like the dog. Dolidze at +130. You have to pay -160 for Imavov.
Yeah, and this is one of those tough ones because he's been one of these guys they've tried to put up there, and he's had a tough go of it with his loss to Strickland. He had the head clash with Chris Curtis. Before that, he looked like he was rolling, and then it was steamrolling through fools. So I like the leads in this one as well. I'm on the same page with you there to go get this one done. And, both guys are looking to try and get right. I think it's going to be an action-packed fight. Should be really, really fun, but I'm going to go with Dolidze as well.
By the way, that's how I'm getting parlayed on Saturday night, baby. I'm going to combine that Dolidze at +130 with Drew Dober at +150. Both them to win. Don't care how they do it. And I'm going to get 6-1 on my money. You were talking about how Imavov was rolling until he wasn't. Molly McCann, same thing. She had, maybe you could say, the knockout of the year, that spinning back fist. Remember, we were doing the show live. I had the bet. I went nuts. She's a -300 favorite against Diana Belbita at +240. Sometimes you talk about fighters that are hard to figure out how to price. We always talk about Charles Oliveira. We talk about Alexander Volkanovski. It's like they're either big favorites or big underdogs. Same thing with Molly McCann. She's a -300 all of a sudden.
I mean, it's just that I feel like that's name. People know Molly, and so she's going to get a lot of love there. As far as that's concerned, Belbita has not been killing it, so this is a good fight to get Molly. It's crazy though. You think about, we talk about most popular fighters earlier in the show. I wouldn't say she's in the top 10, but Molly McCann is one of those people you'll always care if you tune in just because of how entertaining she is. And so I think for her to be on a prelim and the Apex, it speaks to, hey, let's get Molly McCann right and rolling again because we do want to see her back on the big stage.
Molly McCann benefits from Cyborg not being in the promotion and Ronda Rousey wrestling and Amanda Nunes retiring and, Miesha Tate going away and then coming back and Holly Holm getting old. The truth is, we're just begging for fun female fighters to watch. And at this point, it's I like watching both the Chinese fighters that we're going to see in the main event at UFC 300. And that's kind of it. The bullet.
Yeah, I'm just saying, with her, though, she's already had that quality. We're not searching for her. We know Molly McCann is entertaining. We know that she's a captivating personality, but you do need to win. That's the most, that is the important thing. And so I think that's the fascinating thing here is you say that women's MMA is searching for a star. I don't disagree with you. I think she has that star quality, but she does have to get some quality wins to get it right. So if you told me Molly McCann was opening up a pay-per-view or was the undercard of a pay-per-view, I wouldn't be surprised. She'd still be there just because of her value. So for her to be at this type of a spot is kind of telling about where she is, because I do think that she brings that kind of it quality when it comes to people just caring about her fights.
I'm just surprised she's a -300. She hasn't really been cooking either. Anyway, speaking of needing a win, let's move on to UFC 298, where opening that main card is Triple C, Henry Cejudo, the underdog at +135 against Merab Dvalishvili, jacket and all, the favorite at -165. Now I'm going to go the other way on this one. Merab should be a bigger favorite. Merab should at least be a 2-1 favorite in this fight. So -160 looks really good for me. Henry Cejudo looked terrible last time out. He looked like he was stuck in the mud and should have stayed retired.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Merab and his whole weirdness, maybe he should be fighting for the title right now, but because of, I guess, style, friendship with Aljamain Sterling pissing off the powers that be because he wouldn't fight his friend, he still has to go out here and fight another fight to go prove himself. It's a little bit weird. He seems at the peak of his powers right now. Henry Cejudo seems anything but. That's nothing against Cejudo. The guy's had all his great accomplishments, but he did not look fantastic his last time around. So I see no reason why Merab shouldn't be able to handle it.
That's the difference between Aljamain Sterling and Merab, is they wouldn't fight each other. And coming up next, before we get out of here, you and I are going to literally fight each other. Well, we're going to do a segment called "You're Going to Fight Me," so don't go anywhere. Ian Gary on this card, he went from being really popular to really hated all of a sudden. He took like the Patty Pimblett road, minus 230. He's a favorite against Jeff Neal at plus 190. I think a lot of people are going to bet on Jeff Neal because they want him to win the fight, and I'm probably going to be one of those people.
It's the thing that I'm most interested for with the card because, he was supposed to be on the last card and he got sick. He's going through all of this drama with his wife and everybody's killing him. And I think for him, to see what kind of performance it is with everybody not loving him, that's going to be the fascinating thing on how he handles all that pressure.
Exactly. Went from being super popular to we don't really know what we think about that guy.
Also, like, Sean, he is talented. Like, that's the thing.
Yes.
This guy probably does have the credentials and the talent to get to the top. But it's interesting because he kind of went from almost like a golden boy to trying to, do a little of the hated shtick and bit him in the butt. Hasn't really seemed like he could handle the backlash of that. And so I think out of anybody coming up, this guy needs a knockout in the worst way. Him and Jeff Neal have some real heat with him wearing the mugshot of Jeff Neal. So love the matchup. Probably the thing I'm even more interested in this, honestly, than the championship fight. And that's saying something because I love watching Volkanovski fight, and this is a great matchup. But I can't wait to see what Ian Gary's going to do, what the reaction to him is going to be. How hyped are we if he does get the win? If he loses, is there any coming back from that because of how much dirt's been thrown on his name? All that stuff is really, really fascinating with him.
Which adds a lot of pressure. And by the way, also undefeated in the octagon, Ian Gary. Robert Whittaker, the favorite, minus 190 against Paulo Costa, plus 160. This one, to me, I thought when I saw it announced, it would be a pick'em fight. I'm not exactly sure which guy was going to be favored. I'm very surprised that Robert Whittaker is as heavy as a favorite that he is. Is that just because Paulo Costa shows up sometimes, but not all the time? Whittaker didn't last time out, if we're calling it like it is.
No, he didn't. Whittaker is coming off the devastating loss to DDP, which definitely doesn't look as bad now because what a role DDP's been on. Costa has not fought in a long time. Last fight was in August of 22. And it was a win over Luke Rockhold. So that'll tell you like where it's been for him. He's not.
I love that fight. I love that fight.
Yeah, he's
that
not
was one
been,
of the weirdest, goofiest fights. Yeah. I love that fight.
He's not been very, very active. So I think this is just more of an air of mystery around Paulo Costa. We all see him. He looks like an absolute freak show. On his run to the title was basically knocking everybody out before his weird ass fight with Yoel Romero. Then he had the title fight against Izzy, got killed. Lost to Marvin Vettori with weight, and he's just like the potential that you see is there. He looks like he could be champion. Just if UFC had an action figure, it looked like Paulo Costa, but just hasn't been there for him. So he needs a win in the worst way. But to be Robert Whittaker, yes, there'll be some questions about whether Robert Whittaker's on the other side of it, but it's still beating a former champion. There's not many middleweights you could beat that will look better on your resume than him.
That's also the question about half of the main event. Is he on the other side of it or still in his prime? Let's talk about that the last couple of minutes of this segment. Alexander Volkanovski, first time we'll see him back in the cage since he got knocked out by Islam. Minus 125. Volkanovski's the favorite. No surprise there. Against Ilia Topuria, plus 105. I think a lot of money's going to be coming in on Topuria. I think people, maybe for the first time in his career, have some questions about Volkanovski at the same time. Toporia's star is really shot. I mean, if you think about what he was a year and a half ago, remember, this is a guy that was getting into with Patty Pimblett behind the scenes, and he was calling him hand sanitizer boy, and nobody really knew what his name was. And here we are, 400 calendar days later, and he's fighting for the belt at UFC 298. And this is just my early prediction. I think Topuria is going to take it.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he beats him.
Wow. Knockout?
I wouldn't be surprised. Now that I know Volkanovski is human and that he physically can get knocked out, maybe he will knock him out, dude.
I'm still going with Volk. My lean's always I gotta see it to believe it with certain guys. And him getting a head kicked on 10 days notice, going up a weight class, I have a hard time holding that against him. Toporia's best wins are like Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell. And
hey, those are our guys.
I know, but Volkanovski's like he's beaten Holloway. We thought that he beat Islam Makhachev. Like, just not ready yet. Just not ready yet. I'm not there, and I think that he is going to right the ship and keep his belt.
If there's two people, I will not let you talk smack on. Well, three, 4. My dogs want to chime in. And my mom, and Josh Emmett, and Bryce Mitchell.
Josh Emmett's a sweetheart, but like,
how dare you? How dare you? You know what? You've got to upset me. I'm taking a break. Come up next. We're fighting. You're going to fight me right here on Tapped Out.
Where Sean Levine will step into the cage with Brendan Tobin in Are You Gonna Fight Me?
I'm gonna fight your ass!
Here on Tapped Out.
That's right, fight me like a man!
Only on the BetQL Network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back out my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
Of the show. Appreciate you checking us out. You're Tapped Out on the BetQL Network. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Friends turn foes. The segment is called You're Gonna Fight Me. Henry Cejudo, if he's gonna come back at UFC 298, I predict that he probably loses and then probably retires and probably should have stayed retired. You gonna fight me on any of that?
No, I'm not gonna fight you on that. It was a weird comeback as it was.
Very weird.
It's strange because I wasn't ready for him to go when he went, but then he went, and so like you're like, oh, he's gonna be one of these fighters that actually sticks to it, and he didn't. And I just didn't think that he looked that great his last time out. So now you take on this beast in Merab. I don't think it's fair for me to say, oh, well, now he's washed because he's taking on two absolute killers. But whoa, I mean, dude, it's you're gonna be looking at yourself. Well, what did you come back for this for? Because you would have thought Triple C, most decorated combat athlete of all time, dude's fighting for gold or nothing.
How dare he try to start a family and leave this mixed martial arts sport? What is that guy thinking? Are you kidding me, bro? Leon fighting UFC 300. We think he's fighting against Bilal. Bilal Muhammad, it's like, I don't know what he did, but at some point he pissed off somebody, some higher power, because they just always hold something over him. If it is officially Bilal, I think that's a bad matchup for Leon. And I think the UFC would hate for Bilal Muhammad to be their champion, but that's what I think would happen. You gonna fight me?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like, so is that going to happen? Because they haven't announced it, but Leon did say that he was going to fight at UFC 300. Is that the main event? Like, is that going to be the big?
There's no way. There's no
reveal. There's no way.
There's absolutely
right.
Are you suggesting there's a chance that Dana's going to come out this week and announce that his main event is Leon Edwards versus?
I'm just asking.
Dude, you know how mad people would be? Do you know how mad I'd be? I'd boycott the thing. That's got to be like the 5th best fight on. I know it's for a title fight. I get it. I want to give Leon his respect. He came on the show. I like him. His head kick was awesome there. But come on. If we're being honest, like there's at least 3 or 4 fights better than that.
His last fight against Colby was not good.
No.
And it felt like it could have been a lot better. Now, I do think that he made it look as he was trying to he was doing some weird stuff. He was trying to out-grapple Kobe and stuff like that. So I think he probably played a little bit into it being so bad by choice. But I'm not with it. But, like, if it's not Conor, that feels like it might be the place where it ends up. And I do think that it is going to piss a lot of people off.
I think it's Conor. I think we're going to get, in the next couple of days here, Conor McGregor versus either Michael Chandler. I hope Nate Diaz 3. That would be incredible. That's got to be the best main event. Dricus du Plessis took his belt back to South Africa. It's going to be him and Izzy next. I think Izzy beats him. And I love Dricus du Plessis, but I think Izzy has been in this situation before, right? Where he lost to Pereira, and it was like, all right, dude, you got a lot on the line here. If you're still that guy, go out there and do it. And he did in spectacular fashion. I think that Izzy would knock out Dricus du Plessis. You going to fight me?
Not going to fight you on that. I think that, Izzy is showing the propensity to be able to come back. Also, there's a lot of heat in this rivalry. We've seen Izzy seems to fight better when he has a little bit of an edge to him. He does seem to really hate his opponent. I don't think that was necessarily the case with Sean Strickland. I think in a lot of ways probably overlooked Sean Strickland and thinking that he was going to cakewalk him, and he didn't. So I think that this is tailor-made for Izzy to get his belt back, and that'll be a pretty special thing for him to become a 3-time champion.
We talk about the lack of heavyweight, I guess, star power that's there. You're going to fight me if I say, I think we get John Jones versus Stipe within the next calendar year from today. I think we'll see it, and then they both probably hang it up. You going to fight me?
The more I just think about how they're both acting about it, I do think there does, because if it doesn't happen by December, then it's like, well, what is the point? John's going to be on the shelf again for another injury. Stipe hasn't fought in forever.
And he's already 40.
Yeah, he's already old as hell, and you already have this. You do have some young, fun heavyweights that you would like to see go on their runs. So, I hope that it happens, but I'm not confident. If I have to tell you, I'm not confident that it's going to happen.
You know who's not confident these days? The Miami Heat. They've lost, where are we now? 7 in a row? 8 in a row? How bad has it gotten?
7 in a row.
7 in a row. You're going to fight me if I say, I think it's time to trade Jimmy Butler.
Oh, okay, dude. You're going Kendrick Perkins on me?
I think it's time. I think Jimmy's he served you well, more than well, but I don't think it's happening.
I think that I'm going to fight you on that. I don't think they're trading Jimmy Butler, but I will say this. It's totally fair for that national narrative to all be out there, because this happens with the Sixers when they stink. Where's Joel Embiid going to go? When the Bucks don't live up to expectations, where's Giannis going to go? When LeBron, is he looking for a way out? So, I can't sit here and be upset that you're bringing that up when that happens to other markets and you're wondering, with the Stars window closing, they put themselves in this position. It's the worst losing streak they've had in 17 years. And that was a tanking season where they were tanking for Derrick Rose, but they ended up with Michael Beasley. And then they did end up with Mario Chalmers, though, your boy.
That's right.
In the second round. Love Chalmers.
Love Chalmers.
But before a non-tanking season, they haven't lost 7 in a row since D-Wade's rookie year, the first 7 games of D-Wade's rookie year. So this is really like uncharted territory for this franchise. And when you are in those spots, everything is on the table as far as questions are concerned.
Will they trade Tyler Hero?
I think that's probably the most obvious thing. But I just don't think any major. I think they made their move to hope that Terry Rozier was going to make them a little better. It
How's
hasn't.
that going?
Not great. But I don't think they're going to do anything in 9 days. I think that all the reshuffling will happen in the offseason if they cannot pull a miracle playoff run out of their butts like they usually do.
What else do I have here? Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Tua, all AFC quarterbacks that are not on their way to the Super Bowl because Patrick Mahomes is. I don't know if you heard. All three of those guys that I just mentioned. You're gonna fight me if I say I don't think any of those guys ever win the Super Bowl.
I mean, like I texted you after the game happened with the kid. I'm so annoyed that the Chiefs, the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, and the thing that I hate about it is I'm not a Chiefs hater. I'm really not. I think that Mahomes, but the thing that I liked with Mahomes is Mahomes was like the most fun quarterback to ever watch because he do looks and sidearms and the greatest incompletions you've ever seen in your life. And now they just went up and got to the Super Bowl full Patriots. Like, just throw to our giant tight end, 10-minute drives, methodical, and we're going to let the other team yak on themselves. And I'm just like, oh, no. So let me get this straight. They're just going to keep winning, but now it's not going to be entertaining. Like, that's what disappoints me about it. But how can anybody take away from the king? They've been on top. They figure out a way. I think the thing that's interesting for me, it gives a little bit of relief because, like, I don't have to do, Tua's not the guy, because literally in the AFC, nobody's the guy other than Patrick Mahomes. That's it. He's the guy. Everybody else can kick rocks.
In the NFL, I mean, who you can argue? Dak, Jalen Hurts. There's one guy, and he goes by the name of Patrick Mahomes. We'll see what Brock Purdy has to say about that coming up in the Super Bowl. I'm very surprised San Francisco was favored to win that game. Before we get out of here, just because you're talking about my guy Mahomes, and I'm enjoying the conversation, do you think he surpasses Tom Brady? You think he gets how many rings do you think Mahomes ends up with?
Oh, man.
He gets to 3 if he wins a game in a couple of weeks. He's at 3 already, dude. 27, 28
He's not old. Look, he's not going to pass Brady for me until he hits like the 5 range, because Brady winning 7 is insane, even though he cheated. But yeah, like, this guy is definitely the great of the generation. Like, I just think that you have to, with a sport like this, to think about playing that long, almost to an annoyance, and then that it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around. But the fact that he's done it in this era continually and still is getting to the Super Bowl every year, I mean, like, if he's not the GOAT, like, he's going to be 2. And that's just because winning 7 Super Bowls is hard to even wrap your mind around. And think about the lull they had even between him winning 3 and then 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's well on his way, though, dude. He's insane.
I think he's already at 2, Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not just saying like what he could be. I'm talking about already accomplishments, right? 2-time MVP, 2-time Super Bowl winner, has a chance to be a 3-time if he wins here in a couple of weeks. He's already been to now count him 6 AFC championship games, hosted 5 of those. I mean, honestly, I don't think any quarterback has more accomplishments. I think it's Brady 1. I think that it's Mahomes 2. And here's the scary thing for fans like anybody, like you, of AFC teams that aren't Chiefs fans, is let's just say for whatever reason, Patrick Mahomes does play as long as Tom Brady did, with technology and with health, knock on wood. Y'all got to deal with this for another 15 years. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe he does catch him. It's crazy to think. All right, that's the show. It was a fun one. For our producer, Jake Noacker, for my co-host, Brendan Tobin, I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Tapped Out.